Okay, let's start saying thank you to everyone. This is a kind of special meetup because we are talking in English. In general, we talk in Italian. And I would like to say thank you to Giorgio Bolzoni, who's working for Knobs. Knobs is one of our sponsors. And I would like to say welcome and thank you to Steve from POM, our speaker for this event. Welcome, Steve. Before you start with your presentation, just tell us something more about yourself, what you are doing, and when did you bump into this blockchain industry? And yeah,
sounds good. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure. And when Josef, my co-founder, initially told me that he would like me to be here with you guys, I originally thought that I'm going to be flying to Milano, which has been on the top of my bucket list for quite some time. So I was like super stoked. Then I found out, unfortunately, it's only online for now. But I guess it's the first step, right? So I guess at least something. But I actually thought you would like to learn a bit about me, as in like who is this guy who's like giving this presentation. So I actually have one slide in the presentation itself about myself. If you would like me to start presenting now.
Yeah, sure.
That's good. So I'm just gonna quickly share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it.
We can see it.
Okay, cool. And so we will be talking about mainstream adoption, about bringing 1 billion users into DeFi through NFTs. And so who am I, right? So my name is Steve. I've been in DeFi since about 2017, even though, just like we said a few minutes back, my first DEF CON has been the one in Prague, which was 2018, I believe. But yeah, I have a bit of a background in traditional finance through school, through some internships, through some early employments that I did before I hopped into the Ethereum ecosystem in 2017. I was very lucky to pick, as the last semester at school, I picked Taiwan as the place to go for as an exchange student, and I was very lucky because they opened up a blockchain and smart contracts class there for the first time ever. And it was essentially, even though we were like a business school, it was purely about creating smart contracts on Ethereum back then, which was pretty hardcore, but it was also very interesting. And through that, I've met my previous boss, Will Harborn, who's been ex-Bitfinex at Ethfinex, and now Ethfinex has turned into DeversiFi, which is a trading platform on Ethereum. I've grown up with them as kind of like a head of products or product manager in general. And now I'm fulfilling the same role as head of product and also a co-founder of PON with Josef, whom I already mentioned. And so I was always like super fascinated with the question of how do you onboard people onto innovative ideas? How do you like kind of like either persuade them or like how do even things like catch up? How do how do you turn something that only a small group of people uses on a daily basis into this mainstream product? How to make people not only like use your product, but how to make them love it, and how to make them become active ambassadors for your product as well, and therefore turn your product fully mainstream. And this question specifically was really intriguing when it comes to the space of crypto, space of DeFi for me, because this space is predominantly like engineering people, mostly engineers. And I mean, that's not a bad thing per se. I would say we have, the smartest bunch, in the whole world, currently working in DeFi, in crypto, in the blockchain space in general. But and it's like super important that that's the thing, for moving forward the innovation, coming up with, upgrading the technology, pushing the technology forward. But it's not as handy when it comes to making sure that everyday kind of average users end up using your product, end up spreading it, in the world. AKA, it's not as useful to only have engineers when you want to reach mainstream adoption. And that's like the number one question that I was trying to figure out ever since I joined, the DeFi ecosystem. So how do DeFi and NFTs kind of, how do we turn to mainstream? How do we onboard 1 million users? Let's start with a pretty simple claim, and that is, by the way, I want to say one thing before we dig deeper into the presentation itself. The things that I'm going to be saying here are going to sound somewhat super obvious to some of you, and that is because we're talking about fundamental stuff that has worked, many years before I even started, thinking about them. They are valid now, and they will be valid in about 100 years. So, if somebody in the audience right now is looking for like 3 quick tips to find the next 100x either NFT collection or like DeFi protocol or something like that, that's not what we're going to talk about on this during this presentation. We're going to talk about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals are ultimately what kind of drives the adoption forward. And so the first claim that I would like to make, and that might sound super obvious to you, is that what we're talking about here, blockchain, DeFi, NFTs, all of those are like massive innovations. They are big leaps forward, potentially for the entire society. It's really like this tech that we are talking about here is something that can really, really, take the entire society as we know it today and like move it to the next stage, if we do it correctly. But even if this is the thing, the truth is right now the mainstream doesn't give a fuck about this technology, even though it is so potentially so groundbreaking. And so the question is why? If DeFi, if blockchain, etc., NFTs bring so much value potentially, why does nobody care? Why does the mainstream not use it already on a daily basis? And the answer actually kind of lies right in the question itself. The answer is because it is so groundbreaking, because it is so innovative. And the thing is, mainstream people, or like the vast majority of people in the society, are conservative. not in the political sense, right? Even though I've used this kind of like political image right here, I don't want to go too deep into politics during this, or in fact, I don't want to touch politics at all. But the truth is, people are conservative. People do not really like change too much. And I mean, that's not something to be angry about or anything like that. That's kind of natural. People, just would like to have people things stable, just would like to have things like they used to be. It's just kind of a human nature. So the question is, why are people conservative? Why are people kind of refusing to change, even if in theory the change is for the better? Well, one thing is that it takes effort to change, right? It takes time, it takes energy, it takes some focus to move on to the next thing. And people in general are kind of lazy, or at least are trying to like minimize effort. But also people, as I said, kind of love predictability, love stability. People love, if they can rely on things. And there is also this phenomena of like loss aversion, where the potential for upgrade would need to be significantly larger than, the current state, the current status quo, essentially. So imagine, I don't know, trying to onboard, a regular user who only knows Revolut, the person who only uses internet banking in the current traditional finance form. And let's imagine like trying to force them, or like trying to educate them into using, DeFi today as it is. There is just so many, and let's have a I don't know, a lending pool, for example, as an example. There is just so many moving parts that the person would need to understand. There is just so much perceived risk. What is a liquidity pool? What is a bonding curve? What is an impermanent loss? All this kind of stuff that is so unknown to the person. And so even if you tell the average person that there is, I don't know, 10, 20, maybe even 50% yearly return on their investment potential, it is still not enough to persuade most people to start using those protocols in their current shape. The good news, though, is that if we realize that this psychology is in place, we can kind of reverse engineer the whole thing. NFTs, as they are one of the killer features of that the blockchain ecosystem has produced. I say one of, even though right now it's probably the killer feature, like the number one thing that blockchain tech has produced. Right now, NFTs are the number one thing. Of course, the space is still evolving. So like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it might be something completely different. But like right now, NFTs are the best tool we could have hoped for when we want to talk about onboarding more people to crypto, onboarding more people to the DeFi ecosystem. And the reason why is that NFTs are just so much easier for the regular person to digest, to think about, to talk about, to spread the information, among their friends, etc., etc., etc. You can NFT, you can almost touch, compared to the general DeFi protocol. I'm going to talk about that in a second. With NFT, you can almost touch it. You cannot really touch it, of course, because it's still digital, but you can like almost touch it. Your brain can kind of comprehend that, hey, there is this like token, and there is some art tied to that token, so it might make sense why this has a financial value. You're not, when you're talking about an NFT with a friend, you're not talking about the technological about the technological, aspect of it. You're talking about the fact that there is an ape with bunny rabbit ears chewing a bubble gum, right? That's what you're talking about. And this kind of information is much more easily transmissible, for the average user than explaining what a token standard, what an Ethereum improvement proposal is, right? Compared to, for example, ERC20 tokens, which, if I can borrow this quote from Wolf of Wall Street, essentially, most tokens, their value proposition is just that there are other people who believe that this thing is not a scam, and that's what makes it valuable, right? Like, what do you talk about when you talk about ERC20 token, for example, or its function within a typical DeFi protocol, unless you're talking with a group of very well educated financial engineers, you will most likely not going to be able to go too much in depth about how the protocol operates, unless you just want to bore everybody. And therefore, the group of people who can have a debate and have a quality discussion about the DeFi protocols today is very limited, and therefore we cannot talk about mainstream adoption. When I go back to NFTs, there can be stories, for example, Beeple, how he drew a picture every day for 5,000 days straight. Then he sold it for 70 million on Christie's auction. There is a story behind the thing. That's not the case with the rest of DeFi. So the question is how to kind of combine those two aspects, and how to leverage the fact that there is this very easy transmissibility of NFTs combined with the utility of DeFi, and how to onboard the billion users. Well, I have already kind of answered that, because I said combine, and the goal, I label it here as playing on their turf, which in my opinion, NFTs as we know them today, either art, which is like 95% of the market right now, art and collectibles, but also the remaining 5%, which is, for example, game items and stuff like that. This is something that is psychologically very, very similar to what the people have been using on a daily basis. For example, when we talk about the game items, like every kid in my age has spent countless hours playing video games, right? So it's much more digestible for them to kind of touch this digital asset that can be some sort of a game item, for example, and then slowly start playing with some DeFi aspects of it. So, for example, we say, all right, you hold this sword in game or something like that, something that you've been familiar with for ages. But now I'm coming here and I'm saying, but there is also a marketplace, and there are actually people willing to pay money for this in-game item, right? Or you can also unlock liquidity from the item. You can, use it as a collateral for lending and borrowing, or, you can plug it into some rental protocol and you can start generating yield. So you can see how at the end, the user kind of ends up in the same situation. They end up either directly or through some integration using DeFi, which they would never start using right off the bat on their own. But because they interact with something that is really similar to what they are used to in the real world, in their daily life, now they have made the one step closer to the world of DeFi and like properly utilizing their NFTs. So I guess it comes to this intertwining of, on one hand, having NFTs which are absolutely fantastic from the perspective of being very similar to what people already know, what people have already interacted with. And also, you know, DeFi and the magic that happens in DeFi. You know, I'm using the word magic on purpose because I don't care if the user, or rather, in other words, the user doesn't care what happens on the background. They just want to push a bunch of buttons and they want magic to happen, right? And so you combine those two things, the you know, the comprehensibility of NFTs and the utility of DeFi, and that's what brings you the mainstream adoption. However, what I would like to stress so much, as I said before we started this recording, I just arrived from Dev Connect in Amsterdam, which was a conference that was about DeFi, about NFTs, about GameFi, about the blockchain space in general. But it seemed to me as if there are two distinct, you know, camps of people. On one hand, it was people who were kind of like the DeFi crowd, who, you know, cared about the technology, you know, about coming up with new protocols, etc., etc. And on the other hand, crowd who only cared about, I don't know, collectible NFTs and stuff like that. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a surefire way. If the gap remains in between those two groups, that's a surefire way to kind of run out of VC money eventually and just wrap it up and go home and not really delivering on the great promise. What 100% needs to happen is that those two camps need to embrace each other. Those two camps need to collaborate and leverage the fact that people can understand NFTs and they can squeeze out the utility from DeFi through their NFTs. And that's how we reach the mainstream adoption. That's how we reach 1 billion users. So thanks so much for your attention. I'm super keen to hear your thoughts. If you want to follow up the discussion, just hit me up on like Telegram or Twitter. You can find me on every social media app as Steve_Fau, or hop on our Discord. We're also super keen to talk there.
Thank you, Steve. Really interesting. I never thought about this combination of comprehensibility and utility to drive adoption. And yeah, it's you have a point here. I'm curious to this combination.
Exactly, yeah. So at Pawn, we are building a mortgage for digital assets. So you can see how, you know, right, the first word, mortgage, is something that is familiar to the everyday user. Because, you know, mortgage has been here for like hundreds of years in various forms. And so we want to be able to, you know, if you're, for example, a gamer, or if you're some NFT collector and you have built up this net worth based on digital assets, and you want to bridge this to the real world through a loan, for example, then, you know, you can do that on Pawn. You can use it as collateral. You can take out a loan, and you can finance whatever you want, either in the digital world, either in DeFi, or in the real world soon as well.
And if I use my NFTs as collateral, how would you value my NFTs? Who determines the value of my NFTs?
So right now it's a marketplace. That means you, as a borrower, you show up on the platform and you say, all right, I want to borrow amount of money, and I use this NFT, or I want to use those as other hand, you start getting offers from investors, from lenders who are willing to fund your loan, and you pick whatever suits you the most. And so they offer you various interest rates. They offer you various amounts of credit. So somebody might offer you, I don't know, $100,000 if your collateral is, for example, a Bored Ape. Somebody else might offer you $150,000 at a different interest rate again. So it's kind of like a marketplace, and you pick whatever suits you the most.
Okay. So you are developing this protocol, but do you have also a product that uses this protocol, something that we can actually use?
Yes, exactly. So right now we're operating in a closed beta, which essentially means that the platform is live. It's live on Ethereum mainnet right now. So the front end is there, but there is only about 100 people who currently have access to the platform. So what you can do is go to our website, pawn.finance, or we have now rebranded to pawn.xyz, and there is a wait list. So you can join the wait list, and we are dropping access keys to the people on the wait list kind of over time. But in about 6 to 8 weeks from now, we will be opening up the platform to the public, so anybody will be able to use it.
Interesting. Do you have some partnership on your road ahead? Do you have something that you can disclose?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, one of our partnerships is related to what you mentioned before. It's the appraisal of the assets that are being used as collateral, where we are talking with multiple partners. But the main one that I can disclose right now is Upshot. Upshot is a protocol that kind of gathers data across the industry to help you properly evaluate whatever NFT you might want to be using for kind of the suite of data points to our users from Upshot to be able to properly evaluate their assets and kind of like speed up the process. One other partnership that it's like still very early on one, but I'm pretty sure I can already disclose it. We are working with the guys from Kleros, and we're talking about the topic of collateralized loans, which is something that's like super interesting to us, because right now in the ecosystem in general, no matter if you use pools or if you use, a lending protocol which is based on peer-to-peer, just like ourselves, we're still talking about over collateralized loans, right? And so, of course, we want to get as close to, zero collateral loan as possible, which makes sense in certain scenarios. We just want to serve the entire market. And so we're kind of like exploring the possibilities here. It's probably like a bit of a longer shot, but that's one thing that we're also working on.
And so you could achieve the under collect that thing, but not over, with kind of mechanism like a credit score, digital identity.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are there are probably like several ways how to do that, where the two methods that you have just mentioned, this is like roughly the area that we are exploring with Kleros. But again, it's fairly early on, so we might come up with something else entirely down the road, because the discussion so far has been like really productive. But for example, Aave is also experimenting with something like this, where they are working with delegated credit mechanism, which is not purely under collateralized. Of course, there is still some collateral in the play, but it doesn't need to be the specific person. So that might be one way as well.
Interesting. Do you have competitors? There are other protocols like yours.
Yes. So for example, Aave that I mentioned is not directly working in the same space, but it would make so much sense for them to eventually move in to the space. But again, I would say we don't want to predict anything, right? But it would make sense for like Aave compound to eventually move into the space. But also there is a few companies who do roughly the similar method of like peer-to-peer lending. For example, Arcade or Niftyfi. Niftyfi have been around for quite some time now. Actually, they've been like working on something similar for maybe like 2 years now. They're probably the largest in the space right now, but it seems like everybody is kind of focused on a slightly different market segment where, for example, Arcade, they seem to be most interested in like the blue chip NFTs, either like high profile art or the AAA collectibles such as Bored Apes or CryptoPunks and stuff like that. Whereas ourselves, we see the most potential in the GameFi industry right now, where, for example, if you own a property in Decentraland, maybe, or if you own, I don't know, there is upcoming game Sword where you could also own a land. So again, it goes back to what I was saying during the presentation, where we want to take something that is really familiar to the users, something that they have used in the past. So that means a mortgage for a purchase of a digital land is like really, really similar to regular mortgage used for the purchase of a regular real estate in the real world or like the physical world. And so that's where we want to kind of like start off. But of course, the big advantage of Pawn, I would say, compared to most of the others, is that we have kept things super open. That means you can use literally any NFT as a collateral, and you can ask for any type of credit. So we are not restricted to just like, I don't know, like 3 collections of NFTs. You can literally plug any NFT or even any ERC20 token and use it as collateral. So I would say that's probably the big differentiator, where the other platforms, for some reason, have decided to kind of restrict what you can or cannot use as collateral.
Got it. And do you have any concern regarding frauds? Like I'm submitting a fraudulent NFT, claiming that it's worth like 100 ETH, and instead it's nothing. How do you deal with frauds, or how are you thinking about those things?
That's a very good question, and the answer to that is fairly straightforward. There are some checks. For example, when it comes to ERC20 tokens, there are token registries which we can check if the token is on them, if it's the actual token. So let's say it's the actual wrapped ETH or uni token, for example, or something like that. It's not just somebody else coming up and saying, all right, this is my fake uni token, for example, and trying to get a loan for that. So we can check that, and we can provide the user with the information like, hey, this is the actual token that you're looking for, or we can warn them like, hey, this is some exotic asset that we haven't seen before. It doesn't have any history, so beware. It might be something that you might want to watch out for, but also we don't want to be preventing the user from like using that as a collateral, because maybe there is some exotic niche NFT collection that hasn't seen much like let's say wider adoption in the space. Let's say it's not a CryptoPunk, for example. But it has like small community of people who really believe in the project and just want to lend and borrow among each other. So why would we prevent you from doing exactly that? But of course, we give you all the data to be able to evaluate if this is a legit collection or if it's some sort of a fake thing.
Interesting. Just a quick check if we have some questions from the audience. It seems no. Steve, tell me again, if I want to jump into this project and I want to use it and try it and see concrete things, I go to your website, pawn.xyz, right? Mm-hmm. And there, what I find, there is I can subscribe to a list, to a waiting list, and what I get, tell me again
Exactly. So, by the way, I would recommend joining the waitlist even if you do not intend on like getting into the product immediately. We're gonna be having some fun with the waitlist in a bit, so it might be something you want to do. But joining the waitlist is one thing. We drop the access keys on a weekly basis, let's say 10, 20 of them each week. So either you get in through this, or of course, if you're somebody who really wants to use the product right now, and you have a strong reason to use the product right now. Maybe, for example, you want to create a loan that you cannot do elsewhere, then just like drop me a DM either on Discord, which, by the way, the Discord you can also find on our website, or just drop me a DM on Twitter or Telegram, and I'm like super keen to talk with you about this use case and see if we can get you in faster. Or the third option is to just join the community, mostly Discord or Twitter. Sometimes we host Twitter Spaces, sometimes we host community calls, and we usually drop a few keys during those occasions as well. So that might be one other way how to get your hands on a key and access the platform sooner. But also, I just want to say that in like about 6 weeks from now, we will be opening up the platform for public. So hopefully soon you all will be able to use it.
Nice. I tell you, I will do it right away. I'm curious to test new things, and I see a great potential in what you said.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. I don't see other questions, so I can pause here the recording, and I just want to say thank you to the audience. Tomorrow, likely, I will post this recording to our YouTube channel, and please reach out to Steve if you have further questions. And thank you all.
Thanks so much. And by the way, if you're keen on making the meetup happen in either Zug or Zurich, I'm super keen to like get that rolling as well, to meet you all guys in person, or Milano as well. I mean, I'm keen.
Okay. Noted. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.